Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. I am Sandra Perez.
And I'm Yomara Andrade.
We're account managers for PRC Restoration and your hosts for today. And I'll briefly introduce PRC. We're a full service restoration company. We provide disaster cleanup services for both residential and commercial properties who are affected by water, fire, or mold damage, among other emergency services like disinfecting, board up, sewage cleanup, septic pumping, as well as biohazard, trauma scene, and hoarding cleanup. Since we are an emergency service, we're available 24/7 and we respond within the hour. And we do offer free assessments on all of our services. So we'll leave our contact information if you guys have any questions, or if you do want a free assessment, feel free to contact us.
And now our property management expert, you all know her already, Mrs. Patty Widget. With over 25 years of experience as a regional manager, is here to answer all your questions and concerns with all going on in the rental and housing market. Any questions you may have for her, feel free to type them in the chat. Thank you all so much for joining us and welcome, Patty.
Hello, hi everybody. So before we get started, just to tell you a little bit about me and make sure that I'm protecting my asset to the best of my ability. Just to remind you guys, I am a lot of things. I'm a property manager. I'm a real estate broker. I used to work at a law firm for the past 5 years. I am a lot of things, but I'm not an attorney, and anything that we tell you today does not constitute giving you legal advice. So please make sure that you understand this is an opinion, professional opinion based on my experience in the industry. And by all means, if you have additional questions, you can ask me. If you need legal direction, contact your legal counsel, because that's not me. Okay. So to get started today, I thought we'd talk a little bit about Senate Bill 91, just because it's new and fresh in our minds and it's what's faced in front of us currently. So just a quick recap on it, and then we'll get to your guys' questions. So by all means, start typing them in that chat, because I want to make sure I get as many questions answered as I possibly can. Senate Bill 91 recap. What is protecting, or what is governing us right now? First, let me say this. I never thought in a million years that our government would be able to take my written rental contract and renegotiate the terms as to when the rent is due. Floored. Okay. I just have to say, never, ever, ever did I ever think that that was possible. But here we are. So let's talk about what we can and can't do. With Senate Bill 91, it came with a couple pages of retaliatory issues. What does that mean to us as landlords? If we're not careful, we're going to have to pay fines and we could get sued. We don't need any extra drama on top of the last 14 months of a pandemic that we've already had. Okay, so I'm here to help you err on the side of caution and make sure that you stay out of litigation, especially in a case law case. Let me just talk about that really quickly so you understand, because I'm going to use that reference. You don't want to get in a case law case. You don't want to get in a case law case. What case law is that's the trial that went all the way through the court process to the point where they use that as an example for other cases. And I'll give you one. Back in, I think it was 1973, and I could be off a little bit, and I'm sure Hootie will correct me. There was Green versus California Superior Court back in 1973. This tenant got evicted for non-payment of rent and then turned around and sued the court. He won. And that's why we have habitability guidelines now. So back in the 1970s, a tenant sued the court because they got evicted, but there was uninhabitable living conditions. And now they've set a standard of what's a habitability issue and what's not a habitability issue. So because of that court trial, we now have case law. So rather than trying it and going to figure it out, we already know if we don't have window screens on the property, that's a habitability issue and the tenant doesn't owe rent. Okay, we know that's a habitability issue, so we don't have to run it all the way through the legal process. That's what case law does. It defines the rules for us and for other legal counsel. Okay, that way we know what the rules are. So with that being said, let me say this. Senate Bill 91 added 2 pages of retaliatory issues for various things. None of us want to be involved in a case law case at all. It can last months, 15 months, 18 months, 24 months. We don't know. It's case law. Who knows how long it's going to go on before a judge makes a decision? Sometimes a judge and a jury. You never know. Back in the 1970s, what it cost to do a case law trial in today's economy with the rate of inflation, you're looking at $500,000. And I'll tell you right now, if your insurance company is representing you, they're going to pay to settle. They are not going to let that go all the way to case law because they don't want to spend that much money. And neither do we. Okay. So rather than, and you'll hear this a lot from legal counsel, and this is just me trying to educate you, you guys, and by all means, listen to them. They're the ones that's going to help you in a court of law. But watch for words that they say like could, should, might, most likely. Okay. They're speaking in non-definite terms when they speak to you. Well, you should be able to increase the rent. Most likely, they're not giving you definite terms. If there's not a definite, why are you going to try it? Especially when we have a global pandemic going on and all these protections. It's too scary. It's not worth the cost of your investment. Listen to your legal counsel. Err on the side of caution, and don't be in a hurry to make a move, okay? And that's just me trying to keep you as safe as I can. Senate Bill 91 says no increases in rent if the tenant has been late, even one time throughout the entire pandemic. You don't want to put any late charges on their ledger at all. You don't want to do anything like that. They can have no additional expenses throughout the protected period. So no rent increases, no late fees, no fines for not paying the rent. No, 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 no. If they have utilities already built into their lease and that's part of what they're paying, then that's not a new additional charge. If they did a NSF check and bounced a check during the pandemic, that would be an additional charge. You can't do that. So make sure you're reversing your ledgers, you're rescinding those charges, rescinding any rent increases, giving them a credit on their ledger where it needs to be, because when the metal hits the meat, we don't want to be having our records off and having to make changes and errors. Just so you know, the court can fine you anywhere from $500 to $2,500 per occurrence. So let me give you an example. Let's say I raise the rent on my tenant in May of 2020, pandemic period, right? And I charge them that increase this entire time. The court could fine me for each occurrence, meaning each monthly charge. They could. We don't know what they're going to do yet because we don't have any case law. We don't want to be the guinea pig, okay? The crash test dummy for all landlords. We want to watch that show, not participate in it, okay? Just saying. So no rent increases, no charges to the tenants. They've gotten an extension date till June 30th of 2021. Anybody that owes rent during the pandemic period and vacates, you cannot put the rent money on the disposition of security deposit. You can only charge them for damages. Example, if your tenant gives you notice and they don't give you a 30-day notice and they just say, oh, by the way, here I'm moving out, and hand you the keys, technically they might owe you 30 days worth of rent, depending on what your rental contract says. But because of the pandemic, we can't deduct rents from the security deposit. We can only sue in small claims court. So you could charge them for damages, but if they owed you rent money, you have to return the deposit. That counts during the protected period for rents for tenants. First time that we can introduce small claims court to get a money judgment against them, if we need to go that route, isn't until August 1st. I'm going to go over the money, but as you guys know, HDIC LA is out of the government funds, but San Diego County has an abundance of them. So maybe, just maybe, they will shift money around throughout different counties as it's needed, But for the time being, HDIC LA is out of the government funds. They have applications are closed, simply said. So if you haven't applied for that money yet, you may have missed the boat, okay? As far as the rent goes, I get a lot of questions about the 80%, 20%, yada, yada. So let me just, as it sits right now, we have 3 ways this can go, okay? Meaning the money that's owed to you. Number 1, the tenant could pay it all. They could. Remember, 25% is due on or before June 30th. The balance becomes due the next day, but we can never evict for this money. This is the thing you guys need to understand. It becomes consumer debt basically on July 1st, and we can never evict for it. We can only sue in small claims court. Okay, so that's a little scary. If we take the government funds, they're going to pay us 80% of our past due rents during the pandemic period, and we are to forgive 20%. A lot of programs out there are trying to give landlords 100%, and there are a lot of programs out there for the money. Counties and municipalities are dispersing the funds from the federal government, but they were dispersed to areas. So we have one area that doesn't have enough and one area that has too much. Hopefully they'll be able to work that out throughout the system so we can get as many landlords taken care of as possible. A lot of things that we're starting to see now is the tenant says, well, I know I owe you the money, but I really don't want the government in my business, so I'm not going to apply for my portion. Okay. There's not a whole lot we can do about that from a legal standpoint, just so you guys know. And we're going to get more into the legal aspects of what's going on with our court system right now. Okay. Not to mention Widget's forecast of what we see coming at us. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Don't let it all be bad. Okay, you guys, but be in the know what's going on, and prepare for what we think's most likely going to happen so that we can make sure that we are erring on the side of caution. Okay, we don't want to get involved in a case law case, especially right now. Lots of protections going on. We've never had a global pandemic before. They're writing the rules as this evolves. Okay, so stand back, watch the show. We don't have any control. We just get to watch. So let's go back to the money just so I can talk to you a little bit more about that. If you go through a church program or something like that, it doesn't mean you have to take 80% and forgive 20%. It only applies with the federal bailout funds. So if, and I'm just saying, the local church is going to pay this much of their rent, and I'm just giving another example, the Salvation Army is going to pay that much to help them, and this other organization is going to do that, and all of a sudden you're at 100% of your rents. Can you keep 100% of those incomes? Absolutely. It's only the federal program that says they'll give you 80% if you forgive 20%. But if that program isn't in play and you guys aren't utilizing that program, then that cap amount does not apply. Okay, that only applies with the federal funds, just to make sure everybody's paying attention. Okay, so no additional expenses to the tenant. Very serious fines there, just so you guys know. We don't want any part of that. Here's our next one that's going to bite, and we need to pay attention, you guys. It is considered retaliatory, and we could be fined by the court and or sued if we disclose any rental inquiry information about our tenant during the protected period. What am I trying to tell you guys? A couple years from now, a year from now, 6 months from now, your tenant could move out. They could still be in the house. And you get a call from a new landlord wanting to check their references. Be careful what comes out of your mouth. Be very careful what comes out of your mouth. Okay, we're not allowed to talk about rent delinquencies or anything that happened during the protected period of the pandemic. Everybody got that? I know that there are some tenants and landlords for that matter, that are manipulating the system and using the system. And there are some of us that are victims of that. Okay. We have tenants that won't participate in the government program and haven't paid us the 25% yet, and our hands are tied. We have some landlords that are past the notice of default and looking in the face of a notice of trustee sale with no end in sight financially. We are seeing a huge impact hitting our landlords, especially the single family owners are getting hit the hardest. And the reason that I say that is in single family management, if your unit goes vacant, it's an eye for an eye. If you have a 16 unit apartment complex and one unit goes vacant, it's not an eye for an eye. The other 15 units are going to make up for that one that isn't paying. So when you're dealing with single family residents, that's who's been hardest hit by this pandemic, not the apartment communities. Okay. Not the apartment communities. I know you guys are like, oh, we have a 10%, we have a 30% delinquency. Some owners are, it's much bleaker than that. Okay. So if you can find funds through a municipality or through a church or through the Salvation Army, by all means, go get them. Get the help that you need wherever you need it. The only thing that caps you on the 80% is the federal funds. Okay, so we talked about this. Remember this, you guys. What it says is if the tenant was affected, that's how the law reads. Okay. If the tenant was affected by the pandemic, if the tenant was affected by the state of emergency, and this is me making quotes, but I only have one handout, sorry. So here's my thinking, okay? And this has to do with me working in the law firm and being so involved with fair housing for so long, is the word affected. We've all been affected by this pandemic. We've had to buy masks. We've had to stand in line to buy toilet paper. Okay. We've had all kinds of inconveniences happen. At least one of us has had to deal with a funeral during the pandemic, or a new childbirth during a pandemic, or tried to get married during a pandemic. We've all been affected. The thing is, it's going to be up to an attorney in a court of law to argue who was affected more. Since we don't have any guidelines for a pandemic, it's going to have to go to case law to figure out who was affected the worst, who was affected the least, and it'll go from there. So remember, we don't want to be that person. We don't want to get involved with the case law. And yes, I'm feeding my dog crackers, so he's quiet. So we don't want to get involved in case law, and I can't put that in your heads enough. And I'm going to get, people ask me all the time, Patty, when's the best time for me to raise rents or to terminate tenancy without a reason? Because, you know, I need my house back, or I want to sell, or this is going on, or that's going on. I'm going to keep it real simple for you. Okay. Pay attention. The best thing that I could tell you is err on the side of caution. So under current rules, restrictions, laws, guidelines, etc., without the pandemic in place, if your tenant calls fair housing, files a complaint with them, fair housing calls you, says you can't do that, we cannot terminate tenancy or do anything to that tenant for 6 months, 180 days, or it's considered retaliation. Same thing applies if the tenant calls code enforcement on us and we get a citation issued. We have a violation issued. We can't touch them. Okay. Same thing happens if the tenant brings bed bugs into your property. You cannot terminate tenancy without cause for 6 months, or it's considered retaliatory. Hey guys, what do you think a global pandemic is going to do? I mean, come on, if we can't do it for bed bugs and we can't do it for code enforcement, and we can't do it for fair housing, what makes us think we're going to be able to do it for a global pandemic? You guys paying attention? If your tenant has paid you throughout this entire pandemic period, you owe them, okay? I'm just saying. I know they did their job and they were supposed to, but look at half of the landlords out there in the state of California have delinquency issues. Half. 50% have delinquency issues. Our multifamily communities are rocking. They're not affected as difficultly as the single family and the smaller triplexes and fourplexes and duplexes. Those are hit the hardest. Okay. So with this being said, and us paying attention to fair housing and us not wanting to be have the retaliatory against us. Okay. Well, nobody wants that. I could tell you that it is a better business practice to wait 6 months after the pandemic is over, the protected period, before you do a rent increase or terminate tenancy without cause. It's a better business practice for you to wait till January 1st of 2022. And think about it this way. If we're trying to keep that landlord-tenant balance right, and your tenant has paid you throughout the entire pandemic, do you think that you should reward their good behavior by increasing their rent as soon as you possibly can? Think about it. That's all I'm asking you to do. Don't be in a hurry to go run and make a mistake or get involved in a lawsuit or have something like that attack, because when those teeth bite, they bite hard and it is not going to be pretty. There is some question in my mind, but I think I figured out the why. And I love it when you figure out the why, because then it kind of comes full circle. Okay, so currently, I don't know if you guys know this, but everybody's like, when can we evict? When can we evict? Stop being so quick to pull that trigger, okay? And hear me out. Currently, right now, LA County, uncontested eviction, non-payment of rent, lease violation, doesn't matter. It's uncontested, meaning they don't file an answer. They don't go to court. They go quietly into the night. It goes to lockout. It's done. It's not even no court appearance required. Just so you guys know, right now, that process in LA County, uncontested eviction, is taking 6 months or longer. That means you are going to have 6 months of no income for the tenant that you're evicting. Okay, so think about that. If they're contesting, it's taking anywhere from 8 months to a year to get the tenant out. Are you guys paying attention? Our courts are currently inundated because of the whole pandemic. If you have a property in the high desert area, which is all heard through the Barstow Courthouse, that would be Apple Valley, Victorville, Hesperia, Big Bear. Everybody with me? The high desert area. All those cases go through Barstow Courthouse. Right now, currently, Barstow Courthouse is processing the eviction request that they received from April 7th. What does that mean? Well, you know how we have to send it to the court and we have to wait for them to give us a case number and then we can go serve the tenant, meaning your legal counsel, okay? We send it to the court reviews it, they either approve it and give us a case number or they reject it and tell you what you need to fix on your paperwork. That process alone is taking over 60 days from the court. So right now in Barstow, they're processing application or evictions that were submitted to them on April 7th. We're like close to June, folks. That alone is a 60-day process. So what I'm trying to tell you and explain to you is our history for the past 10 years has been, well, if they aren't complying, evict them. evict them because that's the tool we had. But I'm trying to tell you guys, getting involved in eviction court right now is expensive because you can't take any income from the tenant and you're bleeding money to your legal counsel. I have a feeling that we're going to see a lot more cash for keys offers. Some municipalities are stopping landlords from doing cash for keys. I had to think about that. Why would they pass a moratorium and tell landlords they can't do cash for keys, especially when it's taking 6 months to a year to go through the legal process? Because there's no money in it for the court or the county or the city. If you bypass the legal system, that's what happens. They don't get paid their court filing fees, yada, 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 yada. That all come full circle? Okay. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more cash for keys offers going on when we're looking for possession and things of that nature. And people are going to try to be bypassing this court system and what's happening right now. Here's get inside Widget's brain, okay? Yes, I am a licensed real estate broker. I do not practice real estate transactions. Simply said. We all know that, and I mean all of us, the price of housing in America currently is skyrocketing. Federal mortgage rates are at their lowest. Houses are being sold for more money than they're asking for. People are giving cash bonuses at the close of escrow, especially if you're giving them a vacant unit. That can't go on forever. And for those of us that have been in the industry for, I don't know, the past 15 years, doesn't this kind of look like 2006 all over again? Supply, demand. Yeah. So what I'm telling you is we're in a real estate bubble. If you haven't been paying attention, there is nowhere to rent. Okay. Rentals are few and far between. So prices are skyrocketing on houses, on everything. Okay. That is going to burst. It can't continue to go the way that it's going. What we're seeing is history repeating itself. It's what happens in the real estate market. In the event that this real estate bubble bursts in the near future, what is that going to do to our legal system? Is this thing on? Are you guys paying attention? In the event we have a real estate market crash, we are going to then have a flood of foreclosures hit our eviction court. And then after they get the foreclosure done, they're going to come back and do a foreclosure eviction for the occupant that's in the property. What is that going to do to our court system? It's already backlogged bad enough, don't you think? Just saying. Things that I think about. Looking ahead instead of stopping where the wall stops. I want to see what's on the other side of it. So I have concerns about what's going to happen in the future. Talk to your appraiser, talk to your lender, talk to your real estate broker. They'll all tell you that all the signs are there that the real estate market is most likely going to crash very soon. When that is, we don't know. And if I knew that, I wouldn't be talking to all of you. I'm just kidding. So keep that in mind when our mentality for so long has been just a victim. 6 months of no income and you're spending money on legal. Got to find a way to work through that system, bypass that system, something, because that's not our first action anymore. Yes, it's what we can do, but please, when you're signing up for an eviction, talk to your legal counsel. What is the current time that it takes to do an uncontested eviction in this county? What is the current time it takes to do a contested eviction in the city? It's insane. Also, if you guys are going to do a cash for keys agreement, let me educate you just a bit, okay? Only four people are allowed to negotiate a cash for keys contract. You do not want to be sued for practicing real estate without a license. Remember, cash for keys is considered a real estate transaction. Okay, you're trading a unit for real property. Okay, so 4 people that can perform a cash for keys deal. Number 1, the owner of record. That's easy. Number 2, an attorney. That's easy. Number 3, a licensed real estate agent. Number 4, a licensed real estate broker. Okay. So be cautious about what you're doing and what you're being asked to do to make sure that you're not breaking any laws. You don't want to expose yourself, especially under this pandemic. Let's face it, you guys, California tenants are sue happy for the most part. They have a bunch of laws protecting them. We have little laws protecting us. People ask me all the time, why is it that way, Patty? Because we are 78% tenant occupied in the state of California. 78%. They are 3/4 of the vote. That's why there's so many rules protecting them. We are the minority. We need to err on the side of caution so that we don't get caught up in some ludicrous lawsuit. Okay, it's not worth it. And for those of us that are quick, my tenant's been paying under market value when this pandemic hit, and now the pandemic hit, and I need to get the rents up. Please don't forget about California Penal Code 396 subparagraph B regarding price gouging during a state of emergency. If you increase rents more than 10% during a state of emergency, you could face 6 months in jail and a $10,000 fine. It's not worth it. And come on, if your tenant has paid the rent all the way through the pandemic, do we want to thank them by increasing their rent? What's that do to your landlord-tenant balance? I get that we all see money, okay? I get that that money looks really good right now. Trust me, I own investment property. But at what expense are you going to try to get it? Be careful in what you're doing, please. We're going to see so much case law come out of this pandemic. So many issues are going to be tried to the extent of the legal system, just so that we all have a better understanding the next time a pandemic hits us. Because let's face it, this was not the first time, and it won't be the last, I'm sure. It's just the world we live in. All right, do we have a couple of questions I can start with, Hootie? What is protocol for selling a property? Oh, my camera's in the way, hold on. With a tenant, since we cannot evict when rent isn't being paid? Okay. Let me address this. If you have a property that you want to sell, list it for sale. Nowhere in California law does it say that it has to be a vacant unit. Oh, your buyer doesn't want to buy because the tenants are in there and they know they're going to have to evict them? Try giving them an incentive. We're going to credit you $3,000 or $5,000 to the buyer of the property. So in the event the tenant doesn't vacate as agreed or as scheduled or when allowed, that'll help offset their legal expenses. If you're going to get $20,000 more for your property than your asking price, don't be afraid to give $5,000 back to them for their potential legal expenses. It may close that deal. Once that deal is closed, you're off the hook. Run. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I sold a couple of houses back in August of 2019. I am kicking myself right now. Okay. But back then I just knew the market was going to crash. No, now I know it's going to crash, but hey, you know, when you have skin in the game, sometimes it's hard to see what's going on around you. I am one of those people. So I get it. I understand. I agree. I have a vacancy in my own rental property, okay? And they bring me the application and I look at the application and I turn to my friend in the industry and I say, well, I'm just going to rent it to him because I need the money. I heard myself. I have to give the applications to my friend in the industry and say, can you please look at them? Because apparently I'm emotionally attached. I'm financially attached and I can't see clearly. So just telling you guys, we're all human, okay? You can evict right now if your rent isn't being paid, just so you know, as long as they didn't sign the declaration and return it to you. So the first time that you serve a 15-day notice and they don't serve the declaration, you can start eviction, okay? Remember, that's a 6 month, 8 month, 12-month process with no income, and you're bleeding money to the attorney. Also, you can list a property for sale, tenant occupied. Once you have an open escrow, you can serve a 30-day notice to terminate the tenancy if the buyer intends on occupying the premises. All of that information needs to be on the 30-day notice that you serve. And in the event that your escrow falls apart, your eviction stops right there. So if you have an open escrow and the buyer intends on occupying the premises and you serve the notice to the tenant, you have to wait for and they don't get out after 30 days, you're gonna have to wait for that to go through the court system. How long is your escrow gonna stay open? Because I could tell you right now, it's gonna take 6 months, maybe a year for you to get them evicted. Do you think your escrow is gonna stay open that long? If you do, you're sadly mistaken. When the escrow falls apart, you have no choice but to dismiss the court case. Reason being, you are no longer in an open escrow with that buyer. In the event that buyer falls off and a new buyer comes on, they open escrow, you have to start with a new 30-day notice. It's a whole new occurrence. So there is no easy way there, you guys. In some counties, we have to pay relocation fees. So when you're offering your tenant $500 to vacate and you're like, I offered them cash for keys, I have one question for you, just one. If I came and offered you $500, would you move for $500? Because I wouldn't. Doesn't even cover the moving van. Think about what you're offering them. What is 6 months worth of rent and no legal fees to you? Okay. Have your attention yet? If you're in the city of Los Angeles, you have to apply for the permit to pay them relocation fees, and you're pretty much looking at about $22,000. When you're offering them $500 and they're laughing at you, don't get offended. Think about how you would feel if that was you. I get it. We want to sell. You want me to move. I understand, but $500 is a slap in my face. Think about what you're offering them and what you need to do. I get that they owe you money, okay? I know, it's frustrating. Try to forgive some of that back money. There's all kinds of things that you can negotiate with your real estate agent and your legal counsel, okay? All right, next question. Hi, Patty. When will we be able to increase a unit in an RSO until? Do we know what percentage will be allowed? Thank you. At this time, we can't do any increases. This is what I know. They were trying to do the LARSO increase at 60% of the CPI. So let me say that in simple English. A couple years ago, it was like 3%, okay? They now want us to only do an increase of 60% of the 3%. It isn't final yet. We can't do any rent increases yet. So let's just err on the side of caution. We need to come back and revisit this probably the last week of June is my best guess of when all the rest of the missing pieces that we're all talking about, like fair housing and that issue, and increasing rents and that issue, and terminating tenancy and that issue. I think we're going to get a lot of those answers probably the last week of June. Yes, right before the pandemic protected period ends. Do I know for a fact it's going to end? No, I don't. But here's what I do know. Disneyland opened. If Disneyland opened, okay, Disneyland is opening and everything's starting to open. The only reason I see politicians extending the protected period for tenants is because they're the majority and they're now going to be held accountable for the actions that they didn't do during the pandemic period, and they're trying to protect them. That's how I see it. Not everybody that didn't pay their rent was truly and genuinely affected by this pandemic. We did have tenants that took advantage of the situation. Not all of them did. Some of them genuinely have a need. And I think we genuinely need to help those people. I'll give you an example. Working at the law firm, answer the phone. Hi, I need to evict my tenant. Okay, what's going on? They haven't paid me. Well, we're in a pandemic. I know that, but they didn't pay me in January and the dad died of COVID in January. And I said, okay, sir, well, this is February. He says, I know. And the mom died in February. Well, who are you evicting? Well, they had 3 kids in the house. One's 7, one's 14, one's 17. And they just lost both their parents to a global pandemic. And you want to evict the minor children that are about to be awarded to the state? That's a victim of the pandemic. That is somebody we need to help. Somebody that's out buying brand new cars and not paying us, whole different set of facts, folks. Okay. And I know because I've seen it. I get the frustration. Okay. We have to keep pushing forward on what works best for us. We need to make sure we're keeping our investment properties and not losing them to foreclosure because of this. So I don't know exactly what RSO is going to allow at this point. At this point, you can't do any rent increases anyway. So let's just hang on, wait another couple weeks. We should have more stronger answers. The CPI did come out, just so everybody knows. And I believe AGLA has a great copy of what those increase allowments are. Next slide, please. Is cash for keys allowed? Cash for keys is allowed, except in LA County. You need to talk to your legal counsel first. LA County was passing a moratorium. I believe it takes effect on June 1st. I don't think they're going to allow cash for keys. And I'm uncertain on that, is why I'm not speaking in absolutes. And I'm being dead honest with you. I see why they are implementing it, but I don't agree with it. I think I, as a landlord, should be able to pay someone to get them out of my house at my expense. I'm paying them. Why can't I do that? Why do I have to bypass? Why can't I do it that way? And I get it. It's because the court doesn't get any money. That's the only way I could see why they wouldn't allow that to happen. Made sense. At this time, cash for keys is allowed. Come June 1st, and where your area is, just call and ask your legal counsel. They will be able to tell you better than I could ever tell you, and we'll have a better idea of that as this continues to evolve and we continue to open. And can I tell you guys something? Because 15 months ago, we were all extremely uncertain as to what the future held for us. So far, congratulations, you're surviving your first pandemic. Congratulations. All right, next question. New tenant move-in. What is the percentage? I gotta move my thing. What percentage can be increased from the previous rent? 10% is the maximum per California's Penal Code 396 subparagraph B regarding price gouging in rental housing during a state of emergency. We're still in a state of emergency, folks. So even if you don't have rent control, you have a single family residence, the only thing you own, you still can't raise rents over 10% during a state of emergency. That's the one that gives you 6 months of jail time and a $10,000 fine. So want to be very careful that you're doing that in the 10% bracket. Can you go over 10%? I'm going to be very cautious with what comes out of my mouth. So please pay absolute attention. You need to talk to your attorney. There are some instances where when you flip a vacant, not paint and carpet, but total rehab of a new roof, upgrading the plumbing to change from the piping in the house and having it all repiped, doing a whole new kitchen cabinets, totally rehabbing, okay? You could potentially increase more than the 10% allowed and not be looking at the jail time if your attorney was willing to argue it in court. So it's all up to your attorney and what they're willing to argue in court. But in some instances, I've seen where that has been challenged and the landlord had repiped the whole house. They had done $70,000 in upgrades. So because they did $70,000 in upgrades, it allotted for them, they were allowed to go over that. Again, talk to the person that is going to be saving your rear end in a courtroom, okay? That is who you want to ask that question to. But 10% or less is what the law says on that. It's California Penal Code 396, subparagraph B. It is specifically mentions landlords and rental housing. And again, it's not a civil code, it's a penal code, meaning you could be susceptible to jail time, 6 months, and a $10,000 fine per occurrence. So be careful with that. That trumps everything else that we have. So if you're like, oh no, I don't have rent control, that doesn't apply to me. No, this has nothing to do with rent control. This is price gouging during a state of emergency. Example, you know those guys that sell a gallon of water after an earthquake for like $10? That's now a crime and they go to jail for it. Same thing happens when you do that in a rental house. Make sense? Or there's a fire on the freeway and the tow truck company charges you $3,000 for the emergency tow. No, price gouging during a state of emergency, okay? And it doesn't affect an area, it affects a victim. You can't advertise. If you are a victim of the pandemic, your rent's going to be this much. If you are not a victim of the pandemic, it's going to be this much more. We can't do that. It would be nice, though, if people just walked around with a V on their forehead. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm kidding. Like the A back in the day, the scarlet letter. All right, next question. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be me. Do we have something else, Hootie? He disappeared. Oh, no, there he is. Wait, hold on. Can you move one tenant from one unit to the other without their consent? How would you move a tenant from one unit to another unit without their approval? How would you do that? Because if I came home to my house and all my stuff was gone, and it was moved somewhere else, I'd be calling the cops and having you arrested for grand theft. Just saying. I mean, how do you move someone from one unit to another one without their consent? You can't. I'm trying to still wrap my head around it. I've had to move tenants from a unit to another unit, but they always knew about it. And if they don't want to move, you can't make them unless you have a major issue like flood damage, something like that, where you have a huge habitability issue and you have to put them in a hotel. So you may even have to do that where you have to put them in a hotel, which would be understandable, but I can't see you having to just blatantly move a tenant and them not know about it. I'd be very careful with that. All right, next question. Are late fees on rent still suspended? Yes, until the end of the protected period, and they may go a little bit further after the protected period just because they're trying to protect the tenants because they're the majority vote is how I keep looking at it. That's why, that's the why, you guys, it's the majority. So late fees are still suspended. No additional expenses to the tenant throughout the pandemic protected period. So all the way till June 30th at this point. That's where we are. No late fees, no NSF charges, no additional expenses to the tenant throughout the protected period is how that reads. No additional expenses to the tenant throughout the protected period. Yes. Next question. Can a tenant in an RSO 8-plex that has been sold to a developer who wants to tear it down and build condos hold out for any amount of relocation fee? Yes. To answer your question as simply as possible, yes. RSO, so let me explain this to you. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I'm very, very close, okay? In the event that you want to terminate the tenancy at no cause of the tenant in LARSO, which is the Rent Stabilization Organization, it's what governs the city of Los Angeles as far as rent control goes. You can non-pandemic, you can terminate the tenancy without cause. The tenant can drag that out for up to a year and you have to pay them relocation fees. For an average adult, the price for relocation fees is about $10,000 to $12,000. Okay. If they have minor children living with them, if they're over the age of 55, or simply just say that they're disabled, they get $22,000 from the owner. Okay, so that's what the relocation fees are in LARSO. So when you go to a tenant and you say, I'll give you $500 to move out, the government that controls that area says that you have to give them $22,000. So you're basically insulting them by offering them $500. Get where I'm coming from? The relocation fees is part of LARSO. It's on their website what those fees are, just so you understand. And it depends. So you may try to offer them $50,000 to get out now. And I know I just said 50. But remember what you're up against, especially in LA, uncontested 6 months. Contested, you're looking at a year. And that's a one and done court case. We're going to see a litigation get heavier. Everything's getting heavily litigated at this point. It's getting the legal system. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. The justice system currently seems like it's just us trying to figure out how to keep our investments. Okay. So I'm not bashing. I get that they're inundated, but relocation fees are available on LARSO's website, no doubt. And I try to pay them to get out at close of escrow, and it's going to be an expensive adjustment. Next, if we have another question, please. Would the tenant have to leave if they don't want to leave, no matter if they're offered in terms of relocation fee? It depends on how your cash for keys agreement is written. I think that's what you're asking me is, can you do a cash for keys agreement that has enough teeth in the verbal writing in there that if the tenant doesn't get out and agree, you can evict them? The answer is yes. But if they don't comply with the cash for keys, eviction is your alternative. And we've just talked about how inundated those courts were. So a cash for keys bypasses all of that other stuff. I'm gonna go backwards a little bit here. Let's go back to 2007, 2008 for me real quick, 2009. very heavily involved as a regional property manager for a major property management corporation at that time. I was losing properties just as fast as I was bringing on new ones, to the rate of about 20 a week. So 80 new properties every month, 80. I'd lose 80, I'd gain 80. I'd lose 80, I'd gain 80. So I'm refunding security deposits and doing this while I'm moving people in and taking that. Because remember, with supply and demand, they all have to live somewhere. It's not hard to find somebody that wants a vacant unit when a landlord is losing their investment themselves. So weird time there, but if they don't leave, it depends on the verbiage in your cash for keys agreement, whether or not you can pursue an eviction. I definitely talk to your legal counsel about that. And let me just say this so everybody understands, and let me go back to 2008. Back then, when the market crashed, the housing market crashed, tenants were being offered for relocation fees. I'll give you an example. And it was always rent dependent, area dependent, okay? We may tell them something like on a rent that was $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month. Let's go with the $1,500. We'll give you $5,000 if you're out in 30 days. If you take 60 days, we're going to give you $2,500. And I'm just giving you guys an example. And if you take 90 days, we're not going to give you anything. So basically they were giving them a 90-day notice to vacate on a foreclosure eviction and then offering them different amounts of money. The longer they stayed, the less money they got. Make sense? So that's kind of how they did that then. A relocation fee isn't something that is an automatic. We have municipalities, things that would trigger a relocation fee. I'll tell you because there's two of them. City municipality, that would be LARSO. They have relocation fees. And the other thing that has relocation fees is the statewide rent control initiative, which is AB 1482. So the state rent control, so anybody that has a single family residence that's in a corporation, you have rent control. I mean, that all goes back to AB 1482. So there's relocation fees there, and there's relocation fees by city municipalities like LARSO, HDICLA, yada, yada. So just depends. And if the tenant doesn't get out, I'm going to tell you guys right now, you can just shoot them. It's a lot faster than the legal process, but it still isn't legal in this country. And we don't practice any kind of criminal law. So you're on your own. And I'm just kidding. Don't shoot your tenant. Okay. Trying to prove a point. It's faster, but not legal. Next question. If a tenant wants to pay what they owe after June 30th, do we give them a payment arrangement or accept a payment arrangement offer? Okay, let me say this. What would I do? This is me talking to you guys, okay? Just hear me out. When you take the written terms of your rental contract, okay, your written rental agreement, and you change them by making a payment arrangement, then the protections of your rental agreement go away. And that payment arrangement that you made with them, that's now enforceable in small claims court. Paying attention? When you take the written terms of your written rental agreement and you take a portion of them, like the money, okay, and you put them on a promissory note or a promise to pay or a payment arrangement, it then becomes enforceable in small claims court. So it makes it a little bit tricky when you start doing a payment arrangement. Okay, so you definitely want to talk to your legal counsel and your attorney before you start rewriting the terms of your rental agreement. Okay, it's the easiest way I could explain it to you. You don't want to write a promissory note, which is enforceable in the small claims court, when you could just evict them because they didn't pay you. I'm just saying. So lots of moving parts, lots of different questions. I'll tell you this. Tenant wants to pay what they owe. They owe 25% on or before June 30th. The balance is due the next day on July 1st. Okay? But we can't enforce payment of that based on if our municipality put together that 1 year, we have to wait before we can enforce the money, or something along those lines, 6 months, yada, yada. We still need to wait and see how that all plays out. But if they want to make payments to you, just tell them, fine, you can make payments to me. But I wouldn't rewrite it on a different agreement. An oral agreement to make payments might be a better course of action. Again, I talk to your legal counsel. Next question, Hootie. Oh, tenant violating state criminal law, growing cannabis plants over the personal grow limit, putting the property at risk, forfeiture, energy costs, etc. Can we do a 3-day cure or quit to get rid of the plants, or is it a 15-day now? Obviously, it violates the lease. Please note that this is a holdover tenant by almost 3. I want to say that's going to say years. My screen's just not showing it to me. 3. No, there's a TH in there. So let's say that says 3 months. Okay, lots of moving parts. I've dealt with several marijuana grow labs. I hear you. What city is this in? And please do not tell me it's in LA County. Okay. And I'm not bashing LA County, but LA, I see that. Thank you, Benjamin. LA County passed a moratorium that a 24-hour notice to enter is unenforceable during the pandemic period. In other words, if your tenant doesn't let you in LA and you serve that 24-hour notice, there is nothing you can do about it. Not a thing. Nothing. Okay, so that's a little scary. If they let you in, they let you in. That's their problem. Here's the issue now. You're at a criminal thing, but let me ask you, are the police involved? Because I'm just going to say this. An adult 18 years of age or older. No, it's not 18. I misspoke. There's a lot of information in this little blonde space right here. Any adult 21 years of age or older can grow up to 6 plants. So if you have 2 adults living in a single family residence, they can grow 12 plants. For those of you that aren't aware, a marijuana plant is the size of a small tree. A small fruit tree is how I would describe it. And growing the plant alone puts out an odor and a smell. So what I would do is, and just so you guys understand the 15-day notice versus the 3-day notice, it has to do with money. If it's about money, it goes on a 15-day notice. If it's not about money, it goes about business as normal. So lease violation, 3-day. Non-payment of rent, because it's money, 15-day. Non-payment of utility, 15-day. Broken window, 3-day. You guys with me? Okay. Okay. Money takes the longer time period. Just standard lease violation is the smaller time period. I have a lot of questions. You're saying they're violating criminal law. Here becomes my question. Is the police involved? Is there a police report involved? Is code enforcement involved? Do you have a municipality or a government agency hounding you to do something about this? Could be the electric company, something along those lines. Because in the event that you do, you probably have enough teeth there, and I'd call your legal counsel to see if you could just serve a 3-day notice to quit. They're in violation of the law. If you don't, you most likely are going to have to do a 3-day curable breach of covenant. And depending on the area you're in, because remember, each individual municipality and court system works differently. Example, if you go to court in Los Angeles, the judge is gonna treat you differently than if you go to court in San Bernardino. Okay, so the last time I had a conversation in depth with an attorney a few months ago is how many notices do I need in LA County? How many curable breach of covenant notices do I need in LA County before I can serve the notice to quit? Example, 3-day curable breach of covenant for unauthorized occupants. I'm just going to use that as my example. Don't use that as an example right now because COVID is protecting those people, okay? So maybe it's a bad example. Let me use something different. Let's do modifications to the property without written consent of the landlord, okay? That's an easy one. Modifications to the property without written consent of the landlord, definitely a lease violation. I'm going to serve my first 3-day curable breach of covenant. On day 3, I need to serve a 24-hour notice to go in and see if they fixed the problem. If they didn't, I can serve them a new 3-day curable breach of covenant that says second request and has new dates, times, and witnesses of when we entered and it wasn't corrected. Okay? In LA County, you need to serve the curable breach at least 4 times before you do the quit. In San Bernardino County, you need to do it once. This is why I tell you guys, you need to ask your legal counsel on what works in the courtroom you're going to be in. Okay? Because if it's one and done, hit the easy button. If you got to do it 4 times, you need to make sure all your ducks are in a row. You have dates, times, and witnesses. It says second request, third request, fourth request, new dates, times, and witnesses. When you're building a case on the drama, you need to make sure it's specific. It is the hard way to do things, but right now it's the only way to do things. And in the event that they owe rent on this too, you going after them for growing the marijuana could be considered retaliatory. If you've ever served them a notice to pay rent or quit during the protected time of the pandemic. So definitely want to contact your legal counsel to see if it's worthy of going after. Like I said, without a police report or code enforcement involved, I don't know that I'd do anything during this protected period. Could you do a 3-day curable breach of covenant? Always. If you're in LA County and they won't let you in to reinspect, you can't do anything. That's unenforceable for the protected period of the pandemic. I know, don't shoot the messenger. Next question. Is the pandemic only a state of emergency that raising an occupied or vacant unit 10% or more, only the emergency? Anytime there is a state of emergency in our state, okay, state of emergency, it covers the entire state. It doesn't cover an area. It protects a victim. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's use the Northern California fires that happened a couple of years ago. Okay, we down here in San Diego increase our rents more than 10%. This person comes to rent from us. We don't ask them if they were affected or a victim of the state of emergency, because obviously they were, and we charge more. Could we be issued a citation, taken to jail? Yeah. Anytime there's a state of emergency, it doesn't affect an area. So it's not affecting Northern California and the surrounding counties. It affects the victim. It protects the victim. If they were affected by the state of emergency, then they're protected. Okay, I know it's tricky. I hope that answers that question though. So during a state of emergency, yes, correct. No more than 10% during a state of emergency. It's under the same law as the people selling flashlights in an earthquake or gallons of water and charging $10 for a gallon of water. It's price gouging during a state of emergency. Have an owner in Northern California with all those fires that listed her house. I think her rent was like $2,900 and she listed it for $4,900 because of supply and demand. She's still in litigation on case law on that. She's looking at 3 counts of $30,000 in fines and 3 counts of 6 months in jail. So we'll see how that pans out. The pandemic slowed that trial down tremendously, but I've been trying to watch it like a hawk, because when we get that information is when we know what we can and can't do. It helps us. It gives us the guideline. There you go. Next question. I have only one single family home that's not under rent control in the city of Los Angeles. I acquired the home on 2/2/21. Can I have the tenant enter into a new agreement and increase the rent? Can't do any rent increases. Oh, they moved in already. Okay, you can't do any rent increases at all during the pandemic period at all. There can be no increase in the rent, no additional expenses to the tenant. So I don't think that I would recommend increasing anybody's rent. And you can ask them to sign into a new rental agreement and increase the rent once the pandemic and the protected periods are over. It's the nicest way I could answer that. So start looking for January 1st of 2022 of when you can do these things and be safe. And again, I'm just giving that to you as a good guideline. Don't know the rules yet, but come on, if they have bed bugs, we have to give them 6 months. What do we think a global pandemic's going to do? Is it a good idea or a bad idea to accept rent by PayPal? You want my opinion? You're having to pay charges for that. They could charge it back. Same way that they could write you a bad check. Here's where it gets tricky. Okay? And please pay attention to what I'm telling you. If they're paying you rent via PayPal and you get involved in an eviction for any reason, non-payment of rent or a material breach of the lease, and they deposit money into your PayPal account the day of trial or the day before trial, you could jeopardize losing your case by accepting funds during the course of an eviction. You could. You have to refund that money right away. A lot of times we don't know when they deposit it immediately because they do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. They're smart little boogers, aren't they? So it's a risk. There's a risk there. That's all I'm trying to tell you, is that is a risk, because how do you turn off your PayPal so they don't deposit money in there? You can't. You can't. The idea is you want to have a portal that can be turned off, because then they can't pay you, right? So try looking at cozyco.com, COZY.co. Very, very simple accounting software, online payment system for landlords. Very inexpensive. I want to say it's free. I think they charge the tenant $3 to pay their rent online. Not a bad deal. If you're a big company or you have more than 10 units, that's not for you. It's simply very simple, simple. If you have 10 units or more, I would absolutely not use that program. But for the independent landlord that has 1 or 2 doors, 3 or 4 doors, it's fine. Next question. I see you moving the mouse, Hootie. Can rent owe prior June 30th carry over? Can the rent that's owed prior to June 30th carry over? I don't think they're going to carry rent over and offer rent protections. If anything, we're going to see protections for 60 days afterwards. And things of that nature. Can the rent owed prior to June 30th carry over? Yeah, some municipalities are going to require that we give them a year to pay that money back. Again, we don't have all the answers quite yet. This has never happened before, and they are pretty much figuring out the rules as it evolves. Next. before we go, we're done. Just want to talk to you guys about a couple things. If you're not a member of Widgets Way, please come join us doing something new again, new and inventive. We do a Wednesday with Widget every Wednesday where we just have an open forum like this. You guys can talk and ask your questions and get real lifetime answers. We have a lot of people that come to those meetings every Wednesday with Widget. We have attorneys that pop in and visit with us. We have other homeowners. Sometimes you listen to somebody else's scenario and you're like, wait, I know how to fix that. I have a great idea. So it's kind of like a property management support group, since we don't have that right now with the COVID pandemic. We lost trade shows, we lost trainings. So that's what I'm trying to do, is keep us all in the know so we know what's going on. And now I'm doing a new one. I'm doing a Widgets forecast. This will be every Friday. And I always say that the laws change every time the wind blows in California. It doesn't happen on a Monday. It doesn't happen on a Friday. It doesn't happen on the first of the month. It just, whenever the wind blows, the laws change. So I'm calling it Widgets Forecast, and it's what I potentially see happening. Culver City just came out with a new moratorium. So we're having other cities that are jumping on the board, but it's just my thoughts, my insights on a Friday. Could it have new laws? Could have projections of what we see, could be trends in the industry. So lots of fun. We're also doing a property management training course where you'll know A to Z through all the different aspects of training for property management. And if you're not a member of Widgets Way, please get involved, because I'm here to help you. It's awesome. We have a great time. Oh, thank you. I see people saying thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm here to help you guys. You can call me, you can email me. Let's figure this out and stay out of litigation. It's expensive. I know that sometimes we are forced to end up there, but sometimes we can handle the problem and avoid the legal process. And to me, that's a win-win, because we're not spending money we don't need to. Big thank you to PRC Restoration Company. And I just want to tell you guys this. PRC Restoration Company still does free estimates. So in the event of a crisis, fire, flood, your tenant just simply says, hey, I have mold. You can call PRC. They will actually come out there within about an hour or so and then give you a full diagnosis and let you know, hey, this is tenant caused damage, or hey, no, this is a problem. We need to call your insurance company. They are awesome. They'll also testify for you in court if need be. And the biggest one that I love is they will talk to your insurance company for you. And somebody asked me, Patty, why would you want somebody else to talk to your insurance company? You don't want to talk to them yourself. You're unarmed, okay? It is their job to find a way not to pay you. You say the wrong thing, they deny the claim. Ouch. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I want somebody that knows how to talk to those people, talking to those people. So this is what I tell them when the insurance company calls me and wants all the details of what happened. I say, oh, I got a phone call from the tenant on this day at this time. I called PRC and here's their number. That's all I know. Remember, you guys, when it's above your pay grade, that's when you get to hit the easy button. PRC's phone number. Hootie, can you pull that up for me before we get off of here? I know you have a slide for PRC, so we'll be showing that. And follow them on social media. They have a lot of trainings and things of that nature. You can learn about lead-based paint, asbestos, things about that part of our industry people don't really talk about that we all need to know. So very, very important. Lead-based paint, asbestos, a murder, death, suicide in your property, because, you know, that's always fun on a Thursday because the wind blew. All right, you guys, please follow them on social media. Feel free to reach out to me if you guys have any more questions. I thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Patty, for all that
Thank
great
you.
information. And thank you everyone for joining us. And for those of you, our social media, you could follow us on PRC Restoration Inc. You could follow us on Instagram and
Facebook, YouTube. YouTube has a lot of educational videos. that I do encourage you guys to go watch. Once again, it's at PRC Restoration Inc. on all of our platforms.
Do you have a
Yep.
phone number that we could give them
Thank
real
you.
quick?
Yeah.
562-340-1068. It's mine, direct. And
My number is 562-338-8564. But you can also get our contact information on PRC Restoration Inc. online or Instagram. It's all there. And you could reach us directly to the office or to us, however you want to.
we'll put it here.
And somebody
Sandra's
asked how
gonna go
you,
ahead and put it on there.
okay, and all the phone numbers, just so everybody knows, are coming up on the screen. They're coming up on PRCs. We're putting them up there. Somebody put up mine, so thank you for that. We look forward to working with you guys in the future. Keep your eyes and ears open for the end of June when we have a better idea of what to expect in July. Don't be shocked. Don't be upset when they give another 6 months of protection period to the tenant. We're expecting that. Okay. So if you're expecting it, it doesn't hurt so bad. We know bed bugs, fair housing, it all gives them 6 months. So why don't we just know that that's what's going to happen here, if not longer, who knows? But be prepared for it. It's most likely going to happen. I'd tell you that that's what my crystal ball says, but it's broken. It's in the shop. All right, you guys have a great week. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Patty.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Bye-bye.